I think the DSOs are going to start needing to think about partnering with medical groups and thinking about how the integration of medical dental insurance is going to impact the dental care, dental industry, and just elevating dentistry to take more ownership of overall healthcare, whether that be diabetic care or high blood pressure. There's just certain conditions that in dentistry we can help drive utilization and drive healthcare that I think we sell ourselves short sometimes. And I think that pressure from payers and from, again, the patient base is going to come. Now, I don't think that's going to probably happen in 2 or 3 years, but I think 10, 15 years down the road, that's going to be the norm.
Hey there, dental economist. If you're a dentist owner or a leader within a dental business thinking about growing production, case acceptance, patient and staff satisfaction, positive outcomes, and everything else that comes with running a dental business, then you're a dental economist, and you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Dental Economist Show. We're meeting at the intersection of profit and purpose as I sit down with dental leaders who share their stories about dentistry, business, and growth. Welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with me, Mike Huffaker. Today, we're honored to have Lorri Detrick, the president and COO of Riccobene Associates Family Dentistry, joining us. With a rich background in healthcare and deep experience in dental service organizations, telehealth, teledentistry, and outpatient healthcare clinics, Lorri brings a wealth of experience as a successful operator to her role at Riccobene. Lorri is a visionary leader known for fostering culture, exceeding financial goals, and advocating for diversity and compassion in the workplace. Just recently, she was honored with the Business Leader of the Year Award from Women in DSO. Lorri, your journey is impressive, very inspiring. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. We had our user event a couple weeks ago, and I think I mentioned it after the dinner, but I had actually done the seating chart. And I, in an act of selfishness, was like, all right, well, I have D. Fisher here to my right, and I've got Lorri right across from me, and you and I had not really had a chance to meet or get to know each other. And sure enough, you switched seats and ended up speaking with somebody else. I still didn't get a chance to meet you, so I'm really excited to have this conversation today, and thank you for joining us. So to start, walk us through your career, what led you to Riccobene, and if you could talk a little bit about how your motivations have changed over time.
Definitely. So going way back, I went to graduate school at the University of Washington in Seattle, and I earned a Master of Social Work degree. So I was very idealistic in my young age and wanted to fix the world as a social worker. And from there, I went into acute care and did discharge planning social work for several years in hospitals. For some personal reasons with childcare and location, I ended up taking a position in a nursing home in the town that we lived in Washington State. And I hadn't been there too long, and the executives of that company approached and asked if I was willing to become a nursing home administrator. And I hadn't really ever thought of myself in a leadership management role before. And so I fortunately took that opportunity that they offered to me, and I did become a nursing home administrator. And I haven't really looked back since as it relates to leadership in healthcare operations. I have found that it's a much better fit for me. I love managing the business. I love building teams. I love all parts of the job of healthcare operations leadership. And I think that throughout my career, I have kind of woven in the heart of being a social worker, right? So at the end of the day, people are at the core of everything that we do, no matter what our business is. And making sure that people feel cared for is so critically important in order for people to perform. So I worked in that industry for about 10 years. I moved into a director of operations role. And then just for personal reasons for my family, it was time to make a little bit of a shift, and was able to meet the CEO, founder of Access Dental Services in Sacramento. And long story short, he ended up hiring me as his chief operating officer, which was my first opportunity to be a COO. And it was my first opportunity to be working in dental, which I knew nothing about. My team would probably tell the story after I had been there for a few weeks of being in a meeting with the managers. And I had to say, like, okay, guys, you keep using this word and I have no idea what it means. What are caries? It tells you how little I knew about dentistry. So worked at Access for 6 years, was amazing. I was able to grow an amazing team there. The owner sold the company after 5 years, so went through that transaction. And then worked for a couple of specialty DSOs through private equity, pediatrics, orthodontics, oral surgery, and prosthodontics. And then I went and decided to be a consultant for a while and see how that was. So I worked for West Monroe Partners, which is a technology consultancy in Chicago. Really enjoyed my time there, learned a lot about, as you stated in my introduction, telehealth, teledentistry, Portability Act. I was able to really dive into a lot of areas of technology in dentistry that had I not had that opportunity, I wouldn't have learned about. So that I'm super grateful for that learning. But at the end of the day, I was working at West Monroe during COVID, and I was sitting in a high-rise apartment in Chicago and stuck there and feeling like at any other time in my career, had COVID happened, I would have been on the front line, in the middle, making decisions about employees, making decisions about care. And it was really hard for me to be on the sidelines. So it told me that I really needed to be back in the middle of operations. So it took a long time. I found Dr. Riccobene through a recruiter, and we hit it off really, really quickly and have built a great partnership. It's an amazing team, an amazing company. I think, I had a really excellent experience at Access, and it's taken me up until this point to kind of get that back, where I really feel like I have that great combination of a really great team, a really great culture, amazing quality of care. It's just ticking on all cylinders. And we're growing really fast. So it's just a really great opportunity. So I would say motivations have changed over the years for different reasons, some financial, some because of my kids, some because of the location I wanted to be in the country. There's different reasons why we make different changes. But I think at the end of the day now, in my mid 50s, I know clearly what I want to do. I know what I'm best at. And so it's great to be in a position where I feel like I'm able to exercise the best of my abilities.
I can relate to the Carrie's story. And to be quite honest, I'm 4.5 years into dental, and I still come across terms relatively frequently where I ask for additional explanation or an understanding of what it is that somebody is speaking about. So there's a steep learning curve from that perspective. I'm coming up on 10 years in technology and SaaS. So I just I think of it as like a career two. I used to be in CPG, and I was selling footwear before I started to sell software. But I remember as I was sending out all these resumes, I was sitting there on my computer and I was Googling, what does SaaS stand for? I had no idea. There's a lot of learning that needs to be done in any of these new industries. I'm curious, you talked about meeting Dr. Riccobene and heading it off. And you're coming up on roughly, I think, 3 years in the organization. It's always intimidating for anybody starting any new job anywhere. And I think that it can be very scary as a leader entering a new organization because there's just so much unknown. At what point did you know that you were in the right spot? Was there like a moment or an experience or a story where you were just kind of like, you know what, this is good. I know that this is where I'm meant to be at this point.
I think Dr. Riccobene and I did a lot of vetting and a lot of questioning in the interview process. And I was also able to come out and meet with the team and meet with my direct reports and visit the offices and get a sense of the actual infrastructure of the company. And because of some of my prior experiences, I had learned what some of the hard questions were that I needed to ask before I could determine whether or not it was going to be a good risk. Every new job is a risk because it's like getting married. You don't really know a person till you've been in it a while. But I think that both of us did a really good job on the front end of making sure that we asked difficult questions of each other about what our expectations were and what we needed. I think once I got on board, it was probably within 6 months that flip kind of switched where it was like, okay, this is where I belong. I think from day one, I felt like it was an amazing company, but because it's family owned, which I've worked in family owned companies for a lot of my career, there's a period of testing on their part where, you're not quite in the club yet. So I think there was on both sides that probably 6-month period where I was getting onboarded. They were evaluating me. We were building trust with each other. And then kind of, like I said, that flip switch where the trust was there. I still didn't do everything perfectly, but it felt like for all the parties, it was the right fit.
I was at a conference a few years ago and had the pleasure of listening to Dr. Riccobene give a talk. And he was kind of telling the story of the growth of the group and kind of his experience and when he ultimately brought in private equity sponsor and kind of like what everything that took place leading up to that. But one of the things that he really spoke about was the importance of the mission, vision, and values that you all have within your organization. we have those as well at Planet DDS, and we think it's really important. But on a day-to-day basis, like how do you integrate those and how do they show up across the company or the organization?
Our mission is to change lives one smile at a time. And Dr. Riccobene is always very clear that when he coined that term, it's not just about patients and creating great smiles. It's about how we treat each other. It's about our employees. And we talk a lot on a day-to-day basis about individuals within the company and are we able to meet their needs both professionally, personally, financially, right? Like we want to make sure that we're taking care of people. And as I stated earlier, that's just something that's been really important to me personally throughout my career. We have a set of core values, and we talk a lot about the Riccobene way, which is essentially the core values and operationalizing those. And what does that mean? Just a couple of hours ago, I was having a conversation with one of my dentists about the Riccobene way, and he was kind of saying, "This what the Riccobene way means?" Because like I don't really like that, and we were kind of going back and forth about like that's not the Riccobene way. Like the Riccobene way is we take care of our patients, we take care of each other, we do the right thing on a daily basis. We are guided by sort of this North Star moral compass, and we need to do the right thing, even when that isn't always to our advantage. So, I think it's important to always just maintain that set of values. And also, I would say we really value the relationships with each other over other things. So, in this conversation that I was just referencing, my conversation was, Doctor, you are much more important to us as a person than what you can produce. So, if you need time off, if you need a sabbatical, if you need a lesson to schedule, like all those things are completely fine if that's what you need to do to take care of yourself. So, those things are just really of the utmost importance to us.
That's fantastic. I think that this next question is probably partially answered by what you just walked us through. But what does culture really mean to you? When you think about, you've called it out on your LinkedIn as, being of paramount of importance. I know it's a priority for you. When you think about what you want that to look like, what does it look like? And what's the definition of culture?
Yeah, it's so nebulous, right? I think it's important to acknowledge in our industry that doctors and managers drive culture. So, as much as we can talk as a big organization about what our values are and what we want our culture to be, every office has its own idiosyncrasies as it relates to their culture because they have leaders in there every day that are driving it. I think the way that I think about culture is how do I want my patients and my employees to feel when they're in our offices? So I want them to feel like it's a place where they belong, that it's a place that they're cared for, that they don't have to be fearful, that they can have their needs met in a way that is satisfying to them financially, professionally, personally. So different set of characteristics, whether we're talking about patients or employees. But I think that it's difficult to completely define culture because the outcome of a good culture is a feeling. And that feeling drives low turnover. And hopefully it drives good Google reviews and it drives all the metrics that we're looking at in regard to those areas. But you can't underestimate the power of what we want people to feel like when they interact with us.
I love that. It kind of goes to the Maya Angelou quote about people don't remember, what you say, they remember how you make them feel. And you just said something I think is really important, that the culture is really driven by the doctors and by the office managers. When you were joining the organization, you talked about how thorough the interview process was and how you had really gotten a good sense of what Riccobene was all about. And they likely got a really good sense of what Lorri was all about. Given that doctors are the ones that drive the culture, and when you're looking to bring new leaders on, is that a consideration? Are you putting a lot of thought into like what type of leaders and doctors you want to bring into your organization, so that you can continue to foster that type of environment and that culture?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's different when we talk about doctors versus managers. For managers, my feeling is you can teach people to do almost anything, but you can't teach people to be nice. So, from a manager perspective, I want to make sure that the quality of the individual regarding their ability to have relationships with people is one of our highest priorities. So, I don't know if I told this story at Women in DSO exactly or not, but the first manager that I hired had been a sales rep for Enterprise Rental Car and had no dental experience, and I had no dental experience. But I thought he was amazing because he had this great customer service background, and Enterprise does a great job of training in customer service. And fast forward to today, he's the chief operating officer of a DSO in California, right? Like, he's been wildly successful and he is a great person. But the point is, like, that skill set of building relationships and having amazing customer service and treating each other well is vitally important when it comes to office managers. When it comes to doctors, absolutely that's important, but doctors are a different breed from the perspective of, like, we need them to be able to do a lot of things. Have relationships is only one of them. And we have enough size and scale in our corporation that we can place doctors strategically based on their skill set. So if we have a doctor who's a great leader, who has all the emotional intelligence, who also has the great clinical skills and experience, then we can put that doctor in a single doctor practice. If we have a doctor that doesn't have that, but they have great technical skills, we're probably going to put them in a practice with another doctor that has more of that leadership acumen. So we have to balance that out. And then we also invest a lot at Riccobene in professional development and coaching. So, we have a professional development coach on retainer. She works with all of our managers. She works with our doctors. She works with us in teams. We can deploy her to work with specific doctors if they want it. We don't force it on anybody, but if someone's having a problem with employees or with communication, we can offer that service to them to talk to her one-on-one about that. So it's important to coach people. Everybody's at their own level of maturity and development in their own careers. But at the end of the day, any employee that comes into Riccobene needs to share our core values. They don't have to have the same level of talent in implementing those values, but they have to at least share them fundamentally. And we find that when they don't, they usually self-select out pretty quickly.
I love that concept of having the coach that you have on retainer that you are basically making available to the members of your team to take advantage to really help up level and grow. I know it's hard for people oftentimes to ask for help, but in a sense, by doing it the way that you all have done it, you've normalized that we all have opportunities for improvement. And we're seeking ways to find an ability to support you and what you need to improve. What does it look like to work with that coach? I'm curious. I think it's a really interesting concept, and it's not something that I've heard others bring up in conversations that I've had with them. So I think it's pretty unique to what you guys are doing.
So she does a lot of things for us. We have an annual offsite retreat that she facilitates for us based on what topic we ask her to facilitate based on. So this past December, we had one with, I think there were 90 or 100 people there. And we talked about, there's a book by Shep Hyken called The Cult of the Customer. And it talks about moments of magic. And that's what we really wanted our theme for 2024 to be, was about the patient experience and about creating moments of magic for our patients, creating moments of magic for each other. So she had developed an entire curriculum around that. Then she also does a monthly newsletter for our managers and a different monthly newsletter for our doctors that talks about usually some kind of a communication technique. This last month, we talked about positive feedback. She does a monthly call with our managers where she engages them. I mean, she has relationships with most of them now because, they've met with her face to face. So, she engages them, asks them to talk about their experiences with the exercises that she provides, et cetera. In addition to that, she's facilitating what we're calling the Riccobene public speaking class. So it's kind of like Toastmasters for Riccobene, but basically helping us as an executive team become better public speakers, which has been great. And then, like I said, I mean, she works with multiples of us and our doctors and our managers on an ad hoc basis and sometimes on a routine basis, just for professional development. So I know with one doctor, she's going through a particular book that this doctor wanted to talk through with her. And another doctor, they're working on specific issues in the office that are happening. And, so it just kind of depends on the receptivity of the doctor or the manager. And then the guidance that we provide to the consultant around, like, this is what we're really trying to accomplish here. So she's very malleable to what we need her to do, but it's an amazing resource. And it's really, like, to your point, I think it's rare to work in a company, especially in healthcare, where that level of investment financially is made into the development of people as better leaders. And no matter where someone goes in their career, these are skills that will help them in the future. It doesn't have to just be at Riccobene.
100%. I find that the desire to help people in their professional development is really strong in most organizations, and that it becomes a talking point. Look, we're going to invest in you. We'll help develop you. We want you to grow. But the reality of how that's executed often falls very short. And so you all have really put something in place that is unique. And you just went through a whole list of the many applications, from public speaking to working through understanding of how you manage and handle patient experience. Like, it really has a broad application. So I love that. You just gave me a whole bunch of ideas that have my brain kind of going right now. So thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. The CEO of NVIDIA recently was giving a talk to Stanford students, and it was a longer talk, but the clip that really kind of gained a lot of traction, that's being sent around a lot on social media, he was talking about the need to build resilience in order to be successful. And while the verbiage that he used might sound a little extreme, he talked about, like, well, I wish you pain and suffering, was the way that he worded it. The point that I think he was trying to make is that you build resilience through challenging times. And that trial by fire, if you will, or kind of getting through and proving to yourself that you have the ability to accomplish something. When you think back across your career, are there any moments that you can kind of point to where it was a significant challenge and you were kind of facing those challenging moments that you feel built your resilience and what you have today?
Yeah, for sure. Some of the things that come to mind, I think definitely when I was at Access and we went through the transaction from the original founder owner owning the company to, having an investment partner and him exiting the company, super difficult for employees who've worked for the gentleman for 20 years and then he leaves and it's a completely different set of rules, right? So that's a lot of adversity, or it feels like adversity. It's obviously not intended to feel that way, but it feels like adversity when you're in the middle of it. So I think that's definitely one of those times when I think I went through something like that. I think COVID was certainly a test for all of us in no matter what we were doing. I think just generally speaking, that what I find is that those types of turbulent times help us to be innovative. So one of the things that we've been dealing with for the last few years at Riccobene, which everyone in the industry is dealing with, is the shortage of hygienists and the difficulty in which it's so expensive, it's so difficult. It's just, the whole thing is a big challenge. And it really caused us to pivot and focus on assisted hygiene models. And that is something that is difficult for an office to switch to, just because it's a different workflow, it's a different patient experience, it's a different doctor experience. Like, it's just different, but it really has helped us from the perspective of adding additional slots for new patients where we have impacted schedules, and being able to provide a better customer experience, and being able to accommodate the fact that, we just don't have hygienists in all of our markets that we can hire. So I think that adversity brings a lot of innovation. I mean, again, back to COVID, dentists who had never even considered teledentistry all of a sudden realized that it could be valuable all the time, not just in COVID.
Assume the answer is yes, that you still do in teledentistry today.
We don't at Riccobene, ironically. But I know that there are other groups out there who use it for triage, who use it for different on-call systems, but we haven't used it since COVID.
When you try to implement something new, like the new hygiene system that you were discussing, it is different workflows, it's different change. Do you receive pushback from doctors and individual practices or managers? And what is your approach to gaining buy-in and implementing and overcoming the challenges of change management?
In that particular example, we have an amazing director of hygiene who has partnered with the individual offices to help them through the change, so that, really helping them with the workflow, with the training of the customer service, et cetera. The chief dental officer sometimes will go and work with the doctors on what that means from their own patient management, because they're adding a column, right? So that's a lot more hygiene checks for them. So figuring out the volume and the mix. I think also with change management, you have to help people understand what's in it for them. And sometimes it's because your job's going to be easier. And sometimes in this case, it's because you're going to make more money. So hygienists that do assisted hygiene have the opportunity to be compensated better. So that helps with change management.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to nail the why and to, articulate that sometimes frequently in order for the message to be received. When you look at all of the data that's available in a dental organization now, and I know that I've seen you talk about data before and discuss it, and there's so many different KPIs that are out there. If you were giving somebody advice that was launching a new DSO, maybe just a handful of offices now with a desire to grow and expand over time, what would be the items that you would really say, this is where you need to focus. Like if you cut out the rest of the noise, all of this is important. When you become more sophisticated, yes, like a Riccobene, there's going to be a whole slew of different things that you measure. But if you were just going to distill it down into this is what this business is all about, and this is what you need to care about, what would that advice be?
I think that there's 5 metrics that a new group should look at. Well, I should say, if we were a new group, these were the 5 that we would look at because I think that they have to be aligned to your values. So the first 2 that we would look at would be Google reviews and turnover. So we always start with those 2 because we say that our mission is to change lives one smile at a time, which is our patients and our employees. So monitoring those 2 metrics is really important to us as a first gate to the success of everything else. Because if we're financially successful, but those 2 things aren't successful, then it doesn't matter. Then I think from a financial perspective, looking at EBITDA, obviously, is very important. Collections is very important, making sure that the production that we're putting on the books is collectible. And I think that it can get out of hand quickly if you're not monitoring it very consistently. And then I would say cost of goods, right? So looking at your gross margin and looking at, are you negotiating the best rates as you grow for your dental supplies, for your labs, making sure, again, we as a group want to have vendor relationships with vendors who are going to partner with us and adapt as things change and as they grow. So if you have a really good lab partner that acknowledges that as you grow and you have more scale, they're going to continue to renegotiate fees with you, then you might be willing to pay a little bit higher at the beginning, knowing that eventually it's going to pay off. So it's that ability to have transparent dialogue around this is where we're at today. We get it. I mean, everybody needs to make money on what they're doing. Like nobody's trying to get anything for free, but we also want to understand like where do we have some leeway? Where can we negotiate? So I think that those 5 things can be really a core of the health of the business. And then as you stated, there's also 500 other things you could look at.
I love the foundational approach of Google reviews and churn. Like that's a great way of just knowing whether or not what you're building upon is going to be firm enough to allow for that growth that you want to have. Now, you mentioned vendors and partnerships. Riccobene was one of the first DSOs that we started to implement on Denticon when I joined Planet DDS about 4 years ago. And we've really appreciated the partnership that we've had with your organization. In dental, things are always changing. Technology is always changing. There's new equipment, new processes, new techniques. When you're in the market and you're looking for a new partner, whether it's for equipment or technology or software solution or what have you, what are the most important elements to you or the considerations that you value when you're looking to select somebody to work with?
So I'm going to answer this in 2 ways. One is in regard to the vendor in particular, like the type of vendor that we're looking for is really, again, that alignment of our values and willingness to partner with us and truly have that transparent dialogue. So, when I came to Riccobene, I was actually excited to hear that we were converted to Denticon because I had used Denticon for 6 years at Access Dental. So I was very, Che Kim was one of the first people I met in the industry. And not because I think Denticon is a perfect product. I think that dental PMS systems all have pros and cons, but I do think that Planet DDS does a good job of communicating and working through problems. So that to me is really important. Like I don't expect any vendor to be perfect, but I do want to know that we're not looking at things black and white and with an inability to problem solve as problems come up. So that's just I think fundamentally important. So, one of the things at Riccobene that we talk about a lot is we're not looking for the least cost. We're looking for the best value. So that might be a little bit of a higher price in order to get that better partnership and that better quality. We're also not going to pay the highest dollar either, right? So it's really finding that balance of quality value related to the service, related to the partnership. The second way I would answer that question is to say, we have gotten a lot more disciplined at Riccobene about selection of products, vendors, technologies with the implementation of a project management office. So, we really try to go through a rigor of figuring out what are the requirements for what we're looking for. What does every stakeholder need to see in what we select? What does the end result need to be for the doctors, for the users, for the accounting team, whatever it is, so that we can thoughtfully go through those processes of selection, not being sort of flung around in the wind of everything looks amazing and I'm a squirrel and the next thing is shinier. It's a hard discipline to acquire. I mean, we're still in the process of training ourselves to use that discipline. It's a skill and a muscle that an organization really has to develop. And again, we've invested a lot of time and money into developing that as a department that can help us govern. So it's a really critical, I think at a certain size of organization, you have to build in that structure. And also, once you do pick a technology, for example, there's a million things that have to happen as it relates to change management and implementation and training and all the things. And without that project management, it's really difficult for functional leaders to follow through on all of it. It's just a lot.
I'm curious, as somebody who runs a sales organization for a software company, you likely get a million cold emails. If you're anything like me and my inbox and how I get blown up on LinkedIn and just via my email address and on my phone and everything else, do you ever take a cold call, or have you received any emails that like really stood out that you actually replied to that generated your interest from just cold outreach?
More often than not, it's delete, 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 delete. It's so overwhelming. I guess the answer would be no, because the only ones I would probably respond to would be ones where the person emailing me references a common relationship. Then I would probably have the courtesy to respond and to, entertain it. Or if someone in the business that I respect has recommended something to me and it happens to come in at the right time. And I don't know if you were on the DVIN call that we did a couple of weeks ago, but I was saying like sometimes it's just timing. Like if you happen to email me when I've just heard about something like that, like for example, we're currently vetting insurance verification AI. If somebody emailed me, and this did happen, where somebody emailed me about insurance verification AI, and we happened to be just talking about that. So I did respond to that one. But it's like a lightning strike timing, right? Like it has to be that perfect timing. So it's tough. I don't envy people like you in your sales roles. Like it's tough.
It is tough, but I agree with everything that you said because I lived through the same sort of experience. There are no shortage of companies that are out there that look to sell to software organizations, either to provide additional tools for sales enablement or any project management. It could be anything. And so we hit up as well. And the timing piece really resonates. And it's the part that nobody can predict, right? Nobody would necessarily know unless you get on a podcast and share that this is the specific product that we're now kind of vetting. Timing is important, but the way that we view it, and I think this is why, from the Plaid DDS perspective, reputation is everything, is our growth is because of recommendations, referrals, word of mouth, those relationships. It's not a spray and pray, reach out to everybody all the time. That just doesn't seem to function. And the social proof of having somebody that you know or a connection has so much more value than a, hey, by the way, I know you have this problem and I'm going to solve it for you sort of approach. So we're aligned. We hopefully will not be spamming your inbox, especially since you are a current client. But if that ever happens, let me know.
And also, I usually try to, once I do have an established relationship with a partner, I do try to pay it back by doing things like this or providing references, to potential customers. Like I get that it goes both ways and that we have to help each other out as we develop that partnership.
Absolutely. Well, we 100% appreciate that. As you look ahead, and we're talking about trends and technologies, what trends or technology, it could be separate, I know they're different things, but do you think are going to have the most significant impact on DSOs and dental practices over the next few years as you're, pulling out your crystal ball and kind of envisioning what you need to stay ahead of to continue to drive the business at Riccobene? Kind of what are the things that are really top of mind for you?
AI, definitely, especially the imaging AI. I think it will become a standard that patients will expect. I think this is not a terribly popular topic within Riccobene, but having better technologies to provide a patient experience that allows more patient autonomy. So whether that be chatbots or automated check-in processes or all of those types of technologies that allow for people to schedule and communicate and transact business without having to actually talk to a human. Although, again, within the Riccobene culture, that's definitely not our preferred style. I think we have to acknowledge that from a society perspective, it is the preferred method of interacting. So like I will go on Google or Yelp or whatever, and I will literally select a vendor based on who I do not have to talk to because I can do it all online. And I'm not young. So like I know that my kids definitely do that. You know what I mean? So I think that's important. This is a whole other podcast, but I'm a huge forward thinker as it relates to medical dental integration or needing to think about partnering with medical groups and thinking about how the integration of medical dental insurance is going to impact the dental care, dental industry, and just elevating dentistry to take more ownership of overall healthcare, whether that be diabetic care or high blood pressure, or there's just certain conditions that in dentistry we can help drive utilization and drive healthcare that I think we sell ourselves short sometimes. And I think that pressure from payers and from, again, the patient base is going to come. Now, I don't think that's going to probably happen in 2 or 3 years, but I think 10, 15 years down the road, that's going to be the norm.
I agree with you. And I also agree that could be a whole probably other podcast episode to talk through what the implications of that actually are and what that could look like. I think there's a lot of different views from folks as to the reality of what that could be at some point. There are some groups like Pacific Dental Service that have really been kind of like leading the way on this integration and in some ways feel very ahead of their time still, because to your point, I don't think it is a 2 or 3 year. I think it is probably a longer horizon, but absolutely something that is worth contemplating and consideration.
Right. But from a technology perspective, most groups, unlike Pacific Dental Services, are not going to be able to afford to go on Epic. So we need vendors like Planet DDS to build the integrators across the medical platforms so that the data, the medical and dental data, can be integrated without DSOs having to use Epic. Because first of all, Epic wasn't built for dental. I've used their product and it's an amazing product from a healthcare perspective, but it's not tailored to dental and it's very expensive. So again, I don't want to get a bunch of emails from people from Epic, but that is a consideration when you look at medical dental integration.
Absolutely. And the reality of the situation, when you look at the Epic business and how large of a business that is, even should dental become a priority, it is still percentage-wise going to never have the capability of being as significant to their business. And the pricing model, to your point, is much different when you look at EHR systems for medical versus what you get with dental. But I don't disagree. I think that there is 100% a need for more interoperability, for tighter integrations. We've done some work with Athena in the past and built some integrations with them. But you don't have like the data standardization either, which creates a whole slew of challenges in dental, unlike what you get on the health side. And I know that there's people working on that too, but it's a ways away. So I think what you'll end up seeing, at least initially, are some more direct, stronger integrations with, maybe Athena, Cerner, Cario, companies like that allow for that integration to take place. But it's going to require a lot to get there, for sure. When you're talking about other technologies and AI for dental, that's almost going to become table stakes. Do your patients, are they appreciative of when a practice is using AI and there's the opportunity for the doctor to actually show them what the results are? And is there like a increased level of trust as a result when that takes place?
I think so. I think patients really appreciate the almost like a second opinion look of the doctor being able to say, like, this is what I'm seeing. I want to be able to show it to you, kind of a thing. I really think it depends on the provider. Some doctors are pretty resistant to it because I think they feel that they don't need it. And I get that. It's certainly not trying to replace them. And at the same time, I think it takes some practice on how it is presented to the patient. But generally speaking, I think that patients, they do appreciate it. And I think one of the things, just generally speaking, that I appreciate about Riccobene is that we do invest a lot into technology, and not just on the AI side, but scanners and having digital dentistry so that we're not using impression materials and nobody likes that in their mouth and those types of advancements. And I think that eventually those will be things that patients expect.
For sure. And speaking of, what patients expect and consumer expectations, and you were talking about, not needing to talk to a person. And I can 100% appreciate the cultural belief that provides a better service experience for folks. And to be honest, for myself, if I do have the opportunity to speak with somebody when I actually need to speak with somebody, it is incredibly refreshing. However, I also would prefer to be able to do most of the things that I want to, whether it's scheduling or otherwise, without actually needing to speak with somebody. But the ironic thing is, last night, somebody sent me a link to a new startup company, and it is effectively a voice AI, where you, the patient, calls in. And it sounds like you're speaking to a real person, but you're not. It's actually an AI agent that is collecting all the information, booking the appointment, reading the PMS and the data that's within that. And so I feel like even the desire to have people speak to a human will eventually be replaced with an AI version of a human that's doing those conversations, which from my perspective, really, it just creates the ability to deliver an even better in-office experience at that point when you have to be face-to-face. Like, it doesn't seem like the value is as strong with on the phone or whatever the case may be. As long as somebody feels seen and appreciated when they're in front of you, I think that's where a lot of the real value is going to come in the future. So last question for you. Where do you go to learn? What different avenues do you pursue to kind of stay up to date on the latest trends in either our industry or in leadership or management or anything?
A few things, I think. I mean, we're all in the same conference circuit, right? So we all see each other for several months out of the year every week. I like to read, leadership development type books, and, I follow Brene Brown, and, I think that there's some gurus that I like to follow. I honestly think that the most learning that I have is from my own team, and just hopefully creating an environment where they feel free to continue to give me feedback so that I can learn from what I'm not doing well. And there's certainly been many things that have happened over the course of the 3 years that I've been at Riccobene where I've had to pivot and do things differently based on their feedback. And I appreciate that because it helps me to learn what is motivating to them. It helps me to learn how to be a better leader in any situation. And, I just think that more intimate setting of learning about yourself is sometimes more painful, but usually more impactful.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of Brene Brown, we did a book club. We do a book club at Flat Duty. Yes, we did Dare to Lead was one of the books that we read of hers a couple books ago. It was very good. Do you have any other books that you would recommend? Any favorites that you would suggest to somebody that was looking to learn more about leadership management or any other topics that you find interesting?
Well, I mean, I mentioned earlier the Shep Hyken book, Cult of the Customer. That's a big one for us right now. I went through a phase in my career where I was a big proponent of the fish philosophy and all of those books. So I don't know if you've read those, but they're a little bit dated, but really excellent books related to customer service and employee engagement. Anything by Brene Brown is amazing. Also, I read the Harvard Business Review cover to cover.
I believe Eric does the same. So you guys have that in common. Awesome. I've really appreciated the time. I guess very last question. I know I already said it was the last question, but what are you most excited about moving forward? Like when you're kind of thinking of the future, what kind of lights you up? What are the things that you get excited about?
Honestly, I think I'm just excited because I feel like I'm at the place that I want to be at until my career ends, right? So I think that over the next 5-10 years, we will see Riccobene double, triple in size. I think we will expand into multiple other states. I think that we will be able to continue to scale and grow the organization while we are able to keep what's special about us. And the challenge of that is immense because the bigger that you get, the harder it is to do that. But to me, that's an exciting challenge.
Lorri, thank you so much for joining. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.